Welcome to the Speak Your Piece podcast. My name is Ian McNaughton. Big E here. Thank you for joining me, coming on to the podcast today. Good friend of the pod, Sukhdeep Sidhu. Sukhdeep, what's going on? It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Oh, good. I know it has been a while.
So Sukh, first, let me just say, I can't remember the last time I saw you. I think the last time I saw you was at Starbucks, wasn't it? Was that the last time I saw you in person? Was when you were working?
No, did I see you at the Goat? No, I don't think I did.
No, I know what it was. When I was going out like 10 days ago, and I was leaving the nest in Squamish. I was leaving the nest.
Oh my God! Yes,
that's when
I saw you.
I don't remember much from that night, but I do remember seeing you because you were going to pick up a girl, and I saw you. And yeah,
I was picking up someone. They do happen to be a female.
Now we planning this. You said that you had a big dinner tonight. Was it with a girl that you were having dinner with? You can share that on the podcast. That's okay to share.
Yes, there was a girl at dinner, and there were some parents as well. But yeah, and that was it was just a nice dinner.
Not a big deal. Way to go, big guy. All right. Okay. So Sukhdeep and I, we know each other. We went to school together. Did you graduate in Neil's grade, wasn't it? Did you graduate with Neil's grade?
I did graduate with Neil's grade.
Neil's my brother, so he graduated a year after I did. Sukhdeep is probably one of the smartest people I know, just like book-wise. One of the smartest people I know. First question. Your real name is Sukhdeep, by the way. Like when I'm not...
Yes. My parents, I have my birth certificate if you want to see. Hold up.
Oh, he's bringing out the birth certificate. Like there are some new listeners here. So if people think I'm calling you Sukhdeep as like a nickname or something, I'm not. That is your real name.
No, this is my official British Columbia birth certificate.
Yeah.
And it's my real name is Sukhdeep.
So, that's
my parents thought that me being like, brown, hairy, and with a turban wasn't enough. Let's name the child Sukhdeep.
You got teased quite a bit for that. Still do, I'm sure.
Not at all. Absolutely not.
And again, it's not a nickname; it's a real name. You are the first person to show your birth certificate on the podcast. By the way, congratulations.
Thank you. Has anybody shown their passport either?
Pardon me?
I have my passport too. If you want to see that.
I might just like screen grab that later and
no problem.
Send that out there.
Theft? Because it looks really similar. So you could definitely like identity theft. You could.
Absolutely. 100%. So right now you are currently, as we record this on Wednesday night, you are at McGill in Montreal.
I am in Montreal currently.
And how is that going? How is Montreal right now?
Montreal's pretty good. Weather's decent. Like nobody spit on me yet. I haven't been hate crimed, which is nice. Which I'm going to be honest, I was genuinely concerned.
Now,
because of certain political policies, which we'll talk about later, there's quite the bias against people with, fabric on their heads.
Yes. Now, this is your second year at McGill, correct?
My second year at McGill, my third year as a university student.
Okay, so pretty much you were trying to do McGill last year and you had to do it all online, correct?
Yeah, I was. Completely online, but I was at McGill last year as well.
And what are you currently doing at McGill, and how much better is it how more useful is it to the universe than what I'm doing?
So, I'm in currently a program called bioengineering. It's you can choose different streams, so you can pick different like categories or whatever. What my stream is called is biomaterials and mechanics. And so things like, different biopolymers, how we can like use different living organisms rather than, your concretes and your metals and your ceramics and so on and so forth. Rather than using, inanimate objects, we can use carbon-based molecules, or we can use biomolecules to create certain things. And like, it has a really good medical and, what's practicality to it, because currently a lot of prosthetics back in the day were made out of like metal and whatever. And if we can design or engineer a type of material that works really well in the body, and we can make things out of it, we could have like working hands for people without hands. We could 3D print organs. We could make the transplant obsolete. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
I have heard nothing positive for metal hips. You see, I've never heard anything but positive stories about people throwing
that they're good,
and just only good stories about metal hips.
Well, we could have like a biohip, and it could be like even better. This person could be running faster than they were before.
Perfect. I might just take that just so I can run faster. It's
yeah, absolutely.
Like I'm, relatively normal, relatively healthy, but I'll still just, take it for the fun of it. So you've been talking about, we would talk about politics. We are currently in the middle of an election. Usually on this podcast, I don't talk about politics because, it's a bit of a touchy subject for some people.
Very touchy.
Very touchy. But I figured you're a good person to chat with because I feel like you are an unbiased, realist as to how things are. And I feel like that makes you the perfect person to come on and discuss. And you and I can just talk, we can just chat, be reasonable about this. That's all we're trying to do here. That's all I'm trying to do. Be reasonable.
Yeah.
Have you been paying attention at all to any of the campaign, any of the politicians, anything?
Like, what do you mean? Okay, their campaigns, like, I don't really care where they are in the country at the moment. Okay. But I have, gone over I don't want to sound like, because I want to try sound like an unbiased source, but every party that has a major play in the election.
Yes. Okay. That's fair.
So that would include the NDP, the Liberal Party, and the Conservatives.
Yes.
Because let's be honest here, the Green Party, I don't mind a good Green Party. I don't mind a good Green Party candidate, but let's be honest, the votes aren't there. Neither are the seats.
My next question was going to be, since you've moved or since you've got to Quebec, are you now a part of the bloc? Like, are you now in favor of the separatist movement since you've moved to Quebec?
Fun fact.
Ooh.
If I wanted to join
the
Quebec Parliament, like run for office in Quebec, I could not.
Oh.
Because of a certain piece of legislation known as Bill 21, which bars anybody with any religious head garments from keeping a public job. So that includes teachers, certain medical officers,
police officers,
any member of the Legislative Assembly. And I think that I'm not too sure if it extends within the bloc's agenda nationally, but it absolutely does provincially here.
You would have to think it would extend nationally.
I would assume so, but I'm going to be honest. They will never form a majority because they don't run outside of Quebec.
Yeah.
So let's be honest, they're irrelevant. All they're there to sort of do is like, screw over a majority government.
Okay.
Because let's be honest here, even this minority government we've been stuck with since 2019 is a result of the bloc gaining quite a bit of popularity in what is a swing province, because essentially Quebec decides who wins.
Quebec and Ontario for the most part.
Well, Ontario, you can relatively say they will vote Liberal. And they're liberal in ideas because they've started to lean away from the Liberal Party itself, but they will typically vote Liberal. And so that's why it's usually been a red province or whatever. Mm-hmm. But Quebec has flipped quite a bit. So when you talk about the 2011 election with Jack Layton and the NDP forming the formal opposition, it was because Quebec went orange.
Yeah.
And that was a big, push towards big push towards Jack Layton's idea in a socialist aspect and how they could help the Quebecois people.
Well, and the other fascinating thing too is like if you took any history class, like I remember in like the public education system through middle school to high school, you realize pretty quickly why, people from Quebec aren't voting conservative. You realize why they haven't really been a real conservative province for the last 150 years. So that I always found interesting as well. What's something that you've enjoyed about this campaign so far? It's still relatively young, but what's something you've enjoyed so far?
I feel like because we don't operate on a two-party system, before the last election, it was essentially a two-party system here.
Mm.
You had your independent here, and you had your Green Party, and you had your couple of like Bloc Quebec seats, and you had your couple of NDP seats before that. But this last election, and since then, I feel like you can really vote where your ideas align, rather than it being this or that. Because when you throw something like the NDP into the mix, you know for a fact that a majority government is now much harder to come by. Just because it's just a lot harder for one party to gain such a large portion of the vote. But that's something I've enjoyed, is people can now really vote where their political ideas stand, rather than thinking a vote is wasted on somebody else.
I was gonna say I totally thought you were going down to PPC line, the People's Party.
Okay, the People's Party is not going to win any seats. Nobody is that radical, and if they are, they're not in the same place in a certain riding. And if they are, congratulations to Maxime Bernier for putting together probably the most anti-Semitic, fully racial, fully like probably
the farthest right campaign that anybody could have.
Oh yeah, literally. And the thing is, people usually associate everything the opposite people associate Canada with, usually, because we're really welcoming. It's not a cultural melting pot, it's a mosaic. But he's like, no, fuck that. People need to assimilate.
Well, actually, that was one of my. I remember, like grade 10, I had social studies with Mr. Walker at House Sound, and like one of the very first things he taught us, which I still remember to this day, was like in Canada, like being Canadian means like celebrating your culture, like where you came from. Like we are, we're pretty accepting to like Indian culture or like South American culture, like. All of it, like being Canadian means that we celebrate this, like this is a part of Canada, whereas compared to the States, where it's like you assimilate into an American culture, like you're an American, you like In-N-Out Burger all the time or something like you know what I mean. You listen to American music,
like that's where you get terms like melting pot and mosaic, because you're chucked into a melting pot and everybody sort of becomes the same mishmash of the same shit. Whereas you have a mosaic, which is it's one larger picture, but there's little individual pieces that aren't all the same.
For sure.
Which I think is a perfect analogy for it.
So with that being said, what are the biggest issues for you during this election campaign? I
feel like the reality of a majority government is a big issue.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's going to happen. Because you have people like Blanchette and you have Singh who have really screwed that up, like they did in the last election.
Mm-hmm.
But this time, because when you look at the age groups of voting, the Canadian voter is getting much younger.
Yeah.
You have much more young people going out to the polls and things like that, and they are voting very left wing. They believe in a society where the rich don't stay rich, but don't get richer. Whereas the middle class benefits from the government's doing, rather than their own by their own means, rather than being left to their own devices. You have a support system in place, which because of things like inflation, seem very attractive to the younger voter.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, we'll just talk about, we'll talk about the British, forget Vancouver real estate market. We'll just talk about British Columbia in general. If a living wage in the sea to sky is a living wage. This is not you having extra money to spend on trips or whatever if you're not budgeting correctly or so on and so forth, is $24 an hour or $50,000 a year, which is what is that? Which is around 66% over minimum wage in British Columbia at the moment. But the thing is, another thing that people need to understand is minimum wage isn't designed for you to,
to live off of.
It's a bare minimum. It's what is seen as, your bare necessity. And you work yourself up from that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because a lot of the people I've talked to, parents, kids my age, etc., cost of living obviously seems to be a big issue. And I don't know if you do those like CBC polls where it's like, where are you on the political spectrum? And it's funny, like one of the questions, like, do you think the minimum wage should increase? And my answer is no. I just don't think the cost of living should be as high as it is. Like, we wouldn't have as high of a minimum wage as we do now if housing was more affordable, if the cost of gas wasn't so high, if the cost of groceries wasn't so high. And that stems from just like, well, if the minimum wage is so high, then people surely should be able to afford all this stuff if we increase all this stuff. It's like, no, that's not how this works.
Which is something people need to understand. The older generation should be able to understand that the best, because they've seen the cost of living go up exponentially.
Mm-hmm.
When you just talk about things like university, a secondary education, a big problem before was that if you went to university and you achieved a bachelor's degree in whatever field you desire, you would be guaranteed a job with very good pay, a livable wage, because you had the qualifications to do so. And the big problem with today's day and age is when you look at countries around the world, if you just look at the millennial population, people 25 to 40, Canada has the highest rate of post-secondary education. It's nearly 90% of people have gone to school in some way or another after they graduated high school. And a lot of these people are making six figures. But if we'll talk about a city like Vancouver, if you're making $100,000 a year in British Columbia, after taxes, you have a take-home pay of around $75,000 a year. $75,000 a year, divide that by 12, you're left with around that $6,000 a month. $6,000 a month, and a reasonable budget is around half. Even half is a bit much, but let's just say half that goes towards rent or housing.
I was going to say
$3,000.
I was going to say that, like, ideally no more than a third is going to be like your housing.
Yeah, but even let's say we did a third, isn't that be $6,000 a month? That's $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month will get you a 1-bedroom in downtown Vancouver. And that depends where in Vancouver, because if you go to Yaletown, you can easily find a 1-bedroom for $2,400 or $2,700 a month.
Yeah.
And that's where the problem, because this person is living what's essentially the dream. They have a university degree, they have a 6-figure job, and they're living in the city of their choice. But even them making 6 figures in their field of choice is still putting them in a very bad situation. And the thing is, in a city like Vancouver, you are paid less because it is a more desirable place to live. People will go there regardless of if they have a high-paying job or not, because they enjoy the lifestyle here. Whereas if you go to a place like Calgary, wages are exponentially higher and the cost of living is exponentially lower.
Yeah, that's true. It's It's one, it's part of the reason why I think there are some I think there are some people who are trying to move out of it. Like I know some people who are trying to move out of Vancouver who are trying to get out of the city just because of the cost of living. And then the only place really that's affordable, like even the Okanagan can still be expensive for students. The island's still expensive for students here.
I feel like anywhere, I would think that's British Columbia as a whole.
That's British Columbia as a whole. And the only really affordable place is Alberta. And
yeah, because the thing is, they're not only is the cost of living lower, your wages are higher.
Yeah.
So if you just take, medicine, which is what I plan to go into, I, as a family physician, on average in British Columbia, makes in the neighborhood of around $200,000 to $250,000 a year before taxes. That same family physician with the same qualifications and same experience and things like that they make nearly double. They'll make close to $400,000 a year before taxes. And that isn't because this person is more qualified or they're better at their job or they're providing a service that the other can't. It's simply where they live. Because to try to get people to go to Calgary is much harder than to go to Vancouver because the lifestyle isn't as I don't even think you can call it luxurious, but it isn't as I don't even know what it is, but
I don't like the cold.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I don't like snow.
Weather is a big thing because it's much easier to deal with rain. You don't have to shovel rain. You don't have, you've got an umbrella, you've got a rain jacket. Whereas, it will keep the water out, most of it, if not all of it. Whereas, you have cold, it's a whole kit. You got the cold, your face is going to freeze off. You need heat, you need so on and so forth. It's just much harder to deal with.
Yeah, I hate cold.
Yeah, exactly. And and a lot of people do. And then the thing, and that's why cost of living is a lot higher in Vancouver. It's just because let's be honest here. Like when I went to UBC last year, a year and a half ago, when I was like, was it a year and a half? Yeah, a year and a half ago when I was at UBC, and it snowed 5 centimeters in Vancouver. 5 centimeters for this place is like us getting like a shower of rain.
Yeah.
5 centimeters. Buses were down, snow days were enacted at forget high schools, universities. Offices were shut. This was 5 centimeters. This is what we would consider like a shower of rain. The city was in shambles.
It don't even get me started at SFU trying to get the buses up the hill.
Oh yeah. I was in one of the R4 buses that people had to get out and push it. Oh, nice. Yeah, which is lovely.
That's so cool. I feel like one of the other issues, cost of living, definitely. I feel like the environment is another big issue, especially for younger people. Especially after this past summer, where I'm willing to bet it was the hottest on record nationally on average. Because it was just so hot for a lot of. We went almost 2 months without rain, at least here in BC.
Yeah.
What I kind of know what your feelings are on the environment. Do you think anything changes after this election in the environment? Do you think we're actually really going to be making any changes, or is this just talk from the politicians?
So this is the thing. The Conservative plan for the environment is very ambitious. And on paper, it seems a bit too ambitious. And then you have the NDPs, which is even more ambitious. And then the problem comes to the Liberal plan on paper is much more doable. It's much more doable within a 4 to 5 year span and so on and so forth. But you have something which happened before was that they didn't deliver on their promises, no matter how attainable they were. And that's a big fear a lot of people have. Even though it seems doable, they haven't delivered on it before. Whereas if you have somebody like O'Toole, if he is putting out this very ambitious plan, you have this very ambitious plan. Hopefully, he'll get a lot of it done, if not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Singh's plan sort of will, set Canada towards the course to be carbon neutral by 2050 and so on and so forth. But a problem with carbon neutrality is people think, I understand, in a perfect world, we could flip the switch and we could be on nuclear power, on safe nuclear power, on turbines, on hydro, on clean energy by the flip of the switch. And the thing is, the government can definitely, it doesn't cost too much. The government could definitely set aside money for it. But the problem comes when you talk about the economic welfare of such a large portion of Canadians.
Yeah.
That's the first problem. When you have people in Alberta who work for the oil sands, and you have people in Saskatchewan who work for the oil sands, or you have people mining and so on and so forth.
Shout out potash.
Yeah, exactly. And the second problem is the infrastructure needs to be put in place for these things to become a reality. Because when you talk about, when you talk about whatever, a plant, like a nuclear power plant, a hydro dam, or whatever it is, you need a team to run it. You need to build the turbines. You need to have resources to keep these things going. And another big thing is when you talk about something like nuclear power, the thing is, people see nuclear being like, oh God, meltdown, whatever. When you think nuclear, if used properly, is the most efficient way to create clean energy. It doesn't pollute. It creates tons of electricity and tons of energy, which is exactly what we want in a small amount of space. The problem lies is nuclear isn't on the right side of the general public.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have the government staying safe with things like solar, or you have wind turbines, which sure produce energy, but they're not nearly as efficient or not nearly as great.
I was going to say cost effective.
Or cost effective. And so the infrastructure needs to be put in place, and then you have to reallocate the jobs that were once creating energy through petroleum and so on and so forth into these other jobs, because these are their livelihoods. And the thing is, you can't wait for a single generation to age out of it because you have more people going in, because it's a very stable source of income. It's a very high source of income for the average uneducated person, because you don't need to be very qualified to work in an oil field or so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
And sorry, the third point is.
Oh, you got a third point? Okay, all right.
I have a third point when it comes to the environment and like energy and whatever. But economically speaking, you have petroleum or oil being one of Canada's largest exports.
Yeah.
And our relationship with the US is very much based on our ability to produce cheap oil for the US in specific. And so at that point, you're not only endangering our economy, but you're endangering our relationship with a very influential, if not the most influential global player.
Well, what I love about Trudeau, one of my favorite things that he said, I don't know if you caught this, about how he had to buy Keystone XL so he could use that money and put it towards like alternative energy, which I thought was hilarious, because I can't wait till like there is no Keystone XL pipeline and then we don't have the money. Maybe then maybe then we're going to be generating enough alternative energy revenue and then it's all paid for. But I don't know. I just think it's really funny. And the other thing I want to mention, I don't know if you'll ever be able, I mean, once it's gone, but I don't know if you'll ever be able to phase out like oil and gas in the northern cities, just because I think they rely on it so much and it's the only cost-effective, efficient way of producing energy right now. Maybe
exactly. That's why infrastructure is a big thing.
Yeah, that's I mean, again, maybe that comes down the line, but to your point, if they don't have the infrastructure, which most of these northern cities do not, unfortunately,
and it's really expensive to put in.
Yeah, and who's gonna foot the bill for that?
Exactly.
So,
And that's the point. So my opinions on Trudeau, the Right Honorable Prime Minister.
oh, thank you. Yes, we wouldn't want him getting upset on this podcast.
Regardless, if we're addressing the leader of our democratic system, the leader of the lower house of the democratic system, I feel like any honorable member of parliament should be addressed properly, and the prime minister is no exception. So the Right Honorable Prime Minister are that he has, for specifically people who look like me, he has done quite a bit when it comes to being put in a position based on qualifications alone. I'm not saying that and a perfect example of that was his ministry. When you had people like the Honorable Minister Navdeep Bains putting the Ministry of Science, Innovation and Technology, and then you had the Honorable Harjit Sajjan, Minister of Defense. You had people who looked like me, who have been in this country for a very long time, who have sacrificed their lives in both world wars for specifically this country, and people who have who have contributed to the economy a lot. You've given them a face in what is in cabinet, in what is essentially the upper echelon of parliament. And so in that respect, he's quite up there in my books. But where it starts to fall apart is, first of all, he is Canadian politics' most prime example of nepotism. His first election, he rode on Pierre Trudeau's coattails. Completely.
Well, no. The other thing too is that I do think back in 2015, people did want to change. I think at that point, I don't think it was totally him writing his.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There is some part to that, but I do think there were a lot of people who are like.
But the thing is, in 2015, people don't realize that Liberals were a third-party candidate. They weren't even in opposition at the time. It was the NDP. It was Jack Layton's NDP.
Yeah, because who was it? It was Mulcair in 2015, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it was. It was. And he would have done considerably well against probably any other Liberal candidate.
Yeah.
But when you bring in, you had at the time, which was a much older voting pool than it is now, you had the sentiment of the father of modern Canada, good old Pierre Trudeau, kept Quebec leaving the Union.
You had brand recognition.
Yeah, exactly. Nepotism. That's why he's the finest example of nepotism in the Canadian parliamentary system, because he rode in on his father's coattails. And then when it came to him being able to hold his own ground, he couldn't. And Canada was in a minority government situation because he couldn't secure the Quebec seats. And those all went to Blanchet. And then this is where the problem comes in when you have a multiple party system, is because you have certain parties that lean on the same political spectrum, because you have NDP and Liberal, who are both much more left than the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is not, they're best at center, maybe center right, if you're being generous.
Yeah.
When you talk about kind of politics, they're not nearly as close as a right-wing party as you can get, such as the Republicans or the Democrats.
No, that's Canadian politics. They're not on that. They're not that.
We're very center. We're very center left as a country.
They're not on that scale of extremism as things are in the States.
Yeah, and so when you have that's sort of the problem. That's why you can't form a majority government, because people who are going to stop voting Liberal are not voting Conservative, they're voting NDP. And that's when you start taking away from a majority. And then unless a singular party can secure enough of the country to get behind them, then you have a minority government. And that's where the problem lies. Because if you have, a quarter of it, the Bloc Québécois, and you have a quarter of them Conservative, and you have a quarter of them Liberal, and a quarter of them NDP, these MPs are no longer voting as a bloc. They're voting on their personal opinions, which they should be voting as a bloc. But you can see in the past that a lot of conservative policies have been undermined by specific members of parliament, even liberals as high as ministers. The attorney Jody Wilson-Raybould completely defied what was her essentially commander-in-chief as a minister. She was attorney general and minister of justice, and she completely defied, and she paid the consequences. And that's when you get a problem, is because you have people going off of brand, essentially, which people in one way is great. People are really, they're voting in what they believe is good. But another problem is you can't really get anything done if you never have anything passing back the House of Commons.
So I don't need to know who you're voting for, but do you have any, like, maybe a prediction as to what you think is going to happen in the election?
I feel like it's definitely going to, I don't think there'll be anybody going to form a majority.
Okay.
But I believe the Quebecois will lose a considerable number of seats. And the Liberals will lose a considerable number of seats. The NDP, I believe, will gain a decent amount of seats.
Okay.
Is my prediction. And I believe that we're in the realm of what's to be a conservative minority government.
Okay. I should mention, I've met Jagmeet Singh before. Cool dude. He's on TikTok, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but he's on TikTok.
Oh, I do. I do know. I'm well aware of his movements. Fun fact: when I was in Burnaby, I didn't live too far away from his own riding of Burnaby South.
He's in my riding. I'm in Burnaby South. That's my.
Oh, you're in Burnaby South.
Yeah.
Are you? Yeah. So boom, there's your riding. And the thing is, his votes in that community in the Pacific, I believe personally, definitely came from a community vote from the Indo-Canadian community, which is a very large population, that riding. And the thing is, we often do vote as a bloc. And even if, and another thing that I've talked to other Indo-Canadians about is, it's with him, it's very hit or miss. It's either they definitely enjoy his ideas and they're absolutely behind him. They're not behind his ideas, but they're voting for him because he's a representation of the community, or they're completely against him.
Yeah, Jagmeet definitely. I think Jagmeet, just in general, Jagmeet has the you either love him or hate him mentality, and maybe that's just NDP candidates in general and what policies they have. But he definitely has the you either love what he's doing, you love the TikTok, you love the campaigning, you love what he's fighting for, or you're just completely against it. So that'll be really interesting to see. I've said this for a while now. I still kind of believe it. I think it's probably going to be a liberal minority, if not maybe a conservative majority, because I think there are some people who will just say, I want a majority government and I don't want Trudeau. So they might just vote conservative, but we'll see. I don't know how that's going to go. Anything else about the election in particular that you want to talk or that you want to get off your chest before we move on?
I feel like a big thing this election is definitely COVID.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's such a big, I don't think it's a big part of the election itself, but because it's such a big part of so many people's lives. And when you come into the idea of when the problem lies with not COVID as a virus itself, but when you talk about measures taken against it. And you have things like people who are not necessarily anti-vax, but you have anti-COVID vax. Which I think everybody's entitled to their opinion, but I personally believe, and I really wish I was talking from a biased standpoint, because it would make things for me a lot easier. But this is me being completely neutral. If you are not getting the vaccine, you are an absolute and utter idiot, because you think that your research, or aka whatever Reddit article you pulled up, is a lot better.
Or your friend Kyle, not Kyle, I know a Kyle. Your friend Derek from high school is on
Derek
Facebook.
from high school posted on Facebook.
And fuck Derek, no, Derek knows so much because he got a C+ in science in high school. So he knows what's up.
Absolutely. And like I saw this tweet once, and it was from a Republican congressman who was saying, why don't we, instead of a vaccine, inject people with a weakened version of the virus so they can build antibodies without actually getting the virus? And so, you know what the problem with that is, Ian? Anti-vaxxers have come full circle and invented vaccines. You know, which is, he literally perfectly described what a vaccine was in that tweet.
You know what I wanted to, you know what my favorite thing I've seen recently on the internet was, I can't remember how long, it must have been like 2 weeks ago now. I think I saw it on Reddit. Somebody shared this Facebook post or tweet on Reddit where somebody on Facebook or Twitter was saying, isn't it convenient how now all of a sudden the majority of people getting COVID are the unvaccinated? Isn't that just convenient for the government in their pandemic? Who would have thought? And everybody's just like laughing at this guy. It's like, yeah, everybody's vaccinated. Like the only people who aren't getting COVID are the vaccinated. If you aren't vaccinated, you're getting COVID. That's how this works. That's science. What were you expecting? Yeah, I think it's great that the anti-vaxxers just think that, you know, now because people are vaccinated, they're not getting COVID, which, as we've seen in reports and charts, that is true. You're less.
And this is the problem. And then people are like, oh, you're gonna have endless amounts of shot because you'll need a booster in 8 months or whatever. What is it called? Because this is the problem. If everybody got 2 shots, nobody would need a third, and it's just so hard for them to wrap their heads around. The problem is if you eradicate a virus, you don't need any protection from it anymore. This is the problem when people talk about vaccination, whatever, and viruses and global pandemics and so on and so forth. When you talk about things like the polio and smallpox, these viruses, these deadly viruses that were decimating villages and towns and cities even sometimes. These were not nice diseases. These were nasty diseases. The problem with anti-vaxxers across the board is they haven't seen the ravages of these diseases firsthand. And that's why they live in their little perfect bubble that they're not going to get this disease and they're not going to die and they're not going to do whatever, because they can fuck off. And I'm not going to be nice about this point, because I really hope these people get COVID and die just from the irony, because they definitely deserve it. And I'm not going to hold back, because they haven't seen the ravages of these diseases firsthand. They live in this little bubble. And the reason why you and I don't have a polio or a smallpox vaccine is because all of our parents decided to get it, or all of our grandparents decided to get the polio vaccine or the smallpox vaccine. And these were deadly vaccines. There was a known risk. If you have immigrant parents, you've seen that little scar that they have right here, or they have it somewhere else, and the skin would bruise and it's left all wrinkly. Like, this was a potent vaccine. It's nothing like we have today. But nobody questioned it, because it was, you could get smallpox or polio and die, or you could get the vaccine. And I feel like that's the mentality you need to go in with. And anybody who isn't getting vaccinated because they're against vaccination or whatever the reason might be is stupid. And they're being selfish. And that's the problem. These are the people complaining and whatever. And you know what another problem I have with is people who've just recently gotten vaccinated because of restrictions being put in place. Because the idea that you were going to die from COVID wasn't extreme enough, but God forbid you can't travel.
Yeah, you can't get on a train or go to a Canucks game or something.
that's more deadly. And the thing is, people are like, oh, now the government's forcing people to get vaccinated. Nobody's forcing you to get vaccinated. We can't force you to get vaccinated. It's just that if you just, and people are like, these are rights and freedoms. They're not. These are not rights. These are privileges.
Yeah, I was having those shower thoughts the other day about, like covering sporting events, because that's what I do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, what I do is a privilege. I don't have a right to go to Canucks games or Lions games.
No, absolutely not. These are privileges. These are not rights. Even you deciding where you want to live is not a right. It's a privilege. So I have people I know who aren't going to be living in university residences because they are not vaccinated. And universities have the absolute right to protect the rest of the students in that dorm from COVID. Because if you are not vaccinated, they don't want you there. And that's completely up to the university discretion.
Well, that's the fascinating thing is, like, this is why we have to have, like, I think we have to have the vaccine passport and this proof of vaccination stuff, because if you haven't, like, I'm kind of along the lines of like the NFL, where it's like, we're not forcing you, we're not mandating a vaccine, but if you don't get vaccinated, your life's just going to be a living hell. Like, you can't come into like these buildings. You have, or if you do, you wear a mask all the time, and like the whole, like, you're getting regularly tested, like the whole 9 yards. That's how it should be. I feel like if you're not getting vaccinated, your life should just be a living hell, because you've just made it harder for everybody.
So when you talk about banks, I know one of my friends was one of the ladies at the clinic was telling me she has a friend who works for BMO, Bank of Montreal, and they have their new directive is that if you are not vaccinated, you must wear a mask inside at all times. You cannot take it off even for eating and drinking. And you have to present at your own expense a COVID negative test twice a week.
Yeah.
And a COVID test is not cheap. It's like 130, 120 is the cheapest I've seen it. So that's around $200 a week at your own expense. At 50 work weeks a year, that's how much is the fuck can I do that? 200. That's 10 grand a year. That's 10 grand a year at your expense, because you decide not to get a free vaccine, which is perfectly normal. And working in a clinic, another thing I'd like to say is brand of vaccine is a big issue. And it's the first time it's been an issue. Because when you talk about, your series of vaccines that you get when you're an infant, your mumps, your rubella, your whooping cough, your chicken pox, your influenza, so on and so forth. The reason why nobody's ever questioned what brand of vaccine they're getting or whatever. The chicken pox vaccine is made by 8 different pharmaceutical companies. The chicken pox vaccine, Procter & Gamble makes one, Johnson & Johnson makes one, Pfizer makes one. You have these little smaller companies that make one, Sanofi makes one, these big pharmaceutical companies, these little ones who make a chickenpox vaccine. Nobody's ever questioned if it's going to protect them or not. And then you talk about efficacy rates. This is a problem when you have the average person starting to use jargon in their day-to-day life, because people don't realize what these words mean, and they associate with them something else that they don't mean. And so when you talk about efficacy rates, people are like, oh, Pfizer has an efficacy rate of 95%, and Moderna's is 94.5. Like, oh, God forbid you get that. Or it's like, oh, my and another thing I don't understand is nobody ever had a flu shot before. Like, people realize you get sick after you get a flu shot.
Well, that's that. Yeah, the vaccines don't completely eliminate the chance of you getting COVID. Like, you could still.
No, it's just it's a considerably higher likelihood that you don't get it and you don't spread it. And people are like, oh, you could still get it. You could still have the asymptomatic blah, blah, blah. Listen. Just because a condom could always rip or tear or have holes in it or not work, but that doesn't mean you don't wear a condom.
Yeah, no, that's totally true.
And that's the problem. And when you have, and then the problem with it is It's like, have people never gotten a flu shot? Like, you get sick after a flu shot. You getting a fever and you getting a cough or you having chills is literally a sign of your body, your immune system in work, in action. And that's the whole point of the vaccine. And people are like, oh, Pfizer doesn't give any symptoms. Oh my God, it absolutely does. It literally depends on the person. It's literally the same shit. You know what? People were trying to tell me that the vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer, are like Coke and Pepsi. That's such a bad comparison, because unlike Coke and Pepsi, there's no difference. Literally same shit. Literally same shit. And then they're like, and then somebody got a hand of what the dosage for Moderna is, or what the dosage of Pfizer is. Pfizer is a 0.3 milliliter dose, and Moderna is a 0.5 milliliter dose. People were like, oh, it's a bigger dose because you need more of it. No, that's just how you have to dilute it. It's just the dilution is different. Like, did people not take grade 10 science? Like, it's a required BC course, like C1, B1 equals C2, B2. This is like basic.
I took grade 10 science and I got a C+, I think. B-.
That's a fucking passing grade.
I don't remember much from you know who was my teacher, by the way, in science? Adam Queering.
Oh, lovely. He has 2 kids now.
I know. Fuck.
Ashton and Arlo.
I don't know what I haven't seen him since high school, but
and he bought a house last year for the first time in Brackendale.
Oh, so now he's going into debt.
Oh, he bought it before COVID.
Oh, good. Okay.
So he's sitting on a gold mine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just the things, just the little fucking things that people have problems with. And like, there's some of the shit these people put in their bodies, like God, like it's appalling to see how picky people are.
We're gonna put bleach in our bodies. What is it? Is it now on animal products? Like, people think animal products are gonna help stop COVID or something, or keep you safer. I feel like,
I don't know. Fucking, apparently essential oils are like, you burn some lavender in your like room and you do 3 circles clockwise with your eyes, and then you do some yoga poses. That's gonna protect you from COVID. Anything's gonna protect you from COVID. So I could talk about vaccinations and whatever. And if anybody's listening to this and you're not vaccinated, I'm gonna be honest. This is me speaking absolutely genuinely and from my heart. I really hope you get COVID, and I really hope you suffer, because you being a dumb, lazy, or selfish fuck, I don't care what category you're in, you have put, I don't know, how many people's lives on hold, how many people have had to alter their lifestyle because of you, and you need to fuck off, and you need to get vaccinated. And you're in Squamish, September 15th. It's a Wednesday from 10 to 5. You can walk in and get a vaccine. If it's your second dose, if it's been 28 days, you can get your second dose.
That I fully endorse that. If I know you're, anti-vax, you're just unvaccinated, and you don't have a good reason to be unvaccinated, probably just slash your tires. I think that's the move.
There isn't a good reason not to be vaccinated. It's like the whole mask argument. People have mask exemptions or whatever. There is not a singular medical reason not to wear a mask. There's no medical exemption. There's nothing.
No, I like the people who are making those like cards, like people who were like card carrying members of this group. That's like, yeah, I don't have to wear a mask or something.
That's my bit. Like, they used to come to the Starbucks all the time, and I told them leave.
Yeah, no,
and they're like, we have an exemption, and they're like, I straight up told them, and I'm not afraid of conflict like at Starbucks. And I told them, I'm like, that exemption is not valid in this store. You must leave. And they're like, oh, but we're paying customers. I'm like, go pay at Tim Hortons.
Go pay somewhere else.
Go across the street and go pay at Tim Hortons. Like, fuck off.
Anything else you want to rant about? We do have some mailbag questions for you.
We'll do mailbag. I could rant on forever, but okay. We'll do some. Oh, one thing I'd really like to know is what people think I do for a living. Wrong answers only. I'm gonna expose him. I'm gonna expose him. I did see Tage's comment that he deleted, and he was the most correct, and I am a sex worker.
Okay. So we'll get to what you do for a living, but I'll get through the mailbag questions first. Okay.
Okay.
First question comes from SYP creator Kiefer Nada.
Oh, very nice.
Yes, and you did Carpool Karaoke with him recently.
I did.
How'd that go?
That went very well.
He says ask him to spell words and make it a segment.
Oh.
So I'm gonna call this segment Sukhdeep Spell Stuff, the triple S segment. And I pulled up an article from CNBC on the 32 most commonly misspelled words, say grammar experts. How many can you get right? So
are we gonna do all 32?
No. I just want 3. I want you to pick a number. Okay. I want you to pick a number between 1 and 32, and I want you to spell that word.
17.
17? Okay. So 17 is maintenance. You have to spell maintenance, please.
Fuck. Shit. Fuck. MAIN TENENCE. No, that's horrible. There's another I in there, isn't there?
No, you didn't get it right, but there's not another. There's only one I.
Yeah.
Do you want me to spell it for you?
Yes, please.
Maintenance. MAINTENANCNE.
Oh, fuck me.
Okay, I'll give you 2 more. Name a number between 1 and 32 that isn't 17.
3.
3. The word for number 3 is acquire. Acquire.
Fuck. ACQUIRE.
That's correct.
That's how it's done.
So apparently common misspelling for acquire is without the C, AQUIRE, but you got it correct.
Yes.
Well, last one. Name or giving a number.
I got it. I got what's another prime number? Do you know what a prime number is? Pick a prime number.
Pick a prime number. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go with 5 then.
Okay, 5.
Calendar.
Okay. CALENDAR.
That is correct. Calendar. That is correct. Some common misspelling is with an E instead of an A.
Oh, okay.
So that's Keith. We'll do that the next time you come on the podcast. We'll do the Sukhdeep spell stuff, the triple S, SSS. Somebody message, why is he such a sexy beast? And do you know who sent that in?
Right back at you. I don't care who it is.
It's you. You sent that in. You said, why is he such a sexy beast? Why do you think you are a sexy beast? Why do you? Is it just confidence? Body confidence?
How am I not? I just want you to contradict. How can you contradict that? You can't.
I really don't have an answer. You have the look.
You know, that's the thing. As somebody who's taken quite a bit of math courses, proof by contradiction is how you need to prove something sometimes. If there's a contradiction to a statement that you can prove that is untrue, that statement, you proved that this thing does not exist. But since you can't provide a proof by contradiction, it's a true statement. It works.
You also wear glasses, which is pretty hot.
I know.
SYP creator Scott Conkin, he asked best place to drink in Montreal.
Holy shit.
Do you have a place you've been going to like recently, or like a cool?
I've been here for 4 days, and I don't drink alcohol, and I don't do drugs. And
do you have a cool pub that you get chocolate milk at?
Oh, fuck. I have no clue. Ask Jake.
Ask Jake. Okay.
What? Ask Jake. I have no clue.
All right.
Somewhere on Park Avenue. I don't know. There's a lot of bars in the plateau or whatever.
I don't know if Jake's actually been on the podcast. I'm gonna have to get him on. So in our Instagram story, we asked, what does Sukhdeep do for a living?
Yeah, lovely.
Friend Jevin Lefebvre of the Left Side Heavy Pod, go check out his pod. He says,
Who?
Jevin, my buddy Jevin.
Oh yeah, is he the Uber driver guy?
No, that's not. No, that was my friend Scott who commented that.
Okay, but what does your fellow podcaster say?
Jevin says you judges Gordon Ramsay's judgment. That's what you do for a living.
I don't know who this guy is, but I like him.
Neil, my brother Neil.
Of course, very nice.
He says your mom.
Lovely, absolutely.
And is there any other comments? Yeah, Katie says there is no wrong answer. Sukhdeep does everything for a living.
I do have quite the wide array of skills.
Does she just?
I have dabbled in a bit of everything.
I was gonna say, would her and Valeska just go to your Starbucks to get stuff, or would they just go next door to like Source or whatever? And
they went to the next door one, but that one's closed now.
Yeah, I know. It was weird because I was walking like, I don't know if you know where I am on Mamquam, but pretty much I was.
Yeah, walking. I do. I've been to. I believe I've been close to your house many times.
Okay, so pretty much I walked from like Mamquam to like go to that Starbucks, but before I got to that Starbucks, I ran into Keith at Source. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go get breakfast at Starbucks. He's like, well, you can't. And I'm like, well, why not? It's like, well, it's closed. And so it's like, oh, well, I didn't know. That was awkward.
Who's this Uber driver guy? Explain to me who he is.
So this is my buddy Scott, who lives in the States. So they're still racist.
Guess what? He's no longer your buddy, Scott.
There is still racism in the States. This is my other friend, Scott.
Listen, I'm just saying, what does Scott do? As you know, for a living.
I don't actually know what Scott does. He was like, he used to work with the Everett Silvertips. So like he's digital media.
Listen, anybody who does digital media, and I mean this exclusively for your friend Scott and Scott only, is a dumb fuck. And he's lucky he wasn't murdered in the back of that Uber.
Do you know Dylan Domi?
Who?
You know Dylan Domi, or I guess his real name like Rajan, but they call him Dylan. He's like buddies with like Garage and Anvier and those guys. Do you know like a Dylan Domi? I think he used to work up at Quest for a while.
Dylan who?
Domi.
Domi.
Do you know?
No, okay.
Anyways, he used to work at Club Flex, right? And I think he went to a wedding in California like many years ago when we were allowed to travel. He was going to like a wedding in California, and he had like beard such as you. He didn't have a turban, but he had long hair. He had a beard and whatever. And like the first thing I like when he got back, like, oh hey Dylan, how was your trip or whatever? He's like, oh cool, the Americans let me on the plane. It was great, and it was just like, oh yeah. Casual.
That is a good start. That's a good start.
Casual racism is still alive and well in the modern age.
Oh, absolutely.
You love to see it. Sukhdeep, that's all I have. Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. Is there anything you want to say? You got one final word. I'll give you like a minute to plug anything that you're working on or anything else you want to say before we head out here. Get
vaccinated, please. Don't be a dumb fuck. Doesn't matter what brand you get. It's the same shit. I don't know, follow me on Instagram.
We'll tag you in all of this.
Yes, very nice. TikTok is the best social media platform currently.
Oh God, no, it is.
And if you don't use TikTok, I'm sorry, you don't have a life, and you think you're better than everybody else, and you can fuck off.
I do. I was off TikTok for a while, and then I got back on. I'm like, I think I was better off it than I was on it. I think my mental health was better.
Why was your mental health better?
Just because I didn't see all the dumb shit that was on TikTok. I could just see it on Twitter or Instagram.
That dumb shit keeps me going.
White people doing the milk crate challenge. Apparently that's banned now on TikTok. Apparently the milk crate challenge is now banned on TikTok.
What the hell is the milk crate? Is that when you drink like a lot of milk?
No, that's where you do like you put the milk crates as like a pyramid, and you gotta run up like the milk crates and get down the other.
Why? No. Why is that banned?
Because apparently it promotes
unsafe behaviors.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's the
listen, okay, that's the final thing. People are too bum wrapped nowadays. Just because somebody calls you some name on the street doesn't mean you need to do a whole ass protest for that shit. You need to take it on the cheek and move the fuck on like everybody else has before. And that's the thing. Oh, diversity. Diversity in the workplace. Listen, if you're trying to artificially create diversity in whatever field, shit doesn't work out. You look at any field where you look at the top of any field where you're based solely on qualification. Medicine, a perfect example. Doctors at the top of their field, wide array of ethnicities. And that's not artificially done. It's just how it works out, because that's how you take a sample size, and that's how it just ends up working out. You don't need to create artificially this. You need to create artificial diversity. And I'm going to be honest, if somebody's racist to you, let's be honest, your white ass or your whatever is definitely probably less likely to get a racial slur thrown at him than I, a big bearded man with a turban on his head and a giant knife strapped to his side is. And so you need to grow the fuck up and move on.
Have I ever told you about like Rav and I would have this kind of night class at SFU, and pretty much we were assigned like some canvas assignment that we had to do like just after the class. So pretty much Rav and I would just go take the time, like the 30 minutes or whatever, and do the assignment. Do you know how many white kids there were at SFU at like 7, 8 o'clock on a Monday night? How many kids?
Yes, SFU, sorry?
No, SFU, like main campus, Burnaby. Do you know how many white kids were working in the library on 7 and 8 p.m.?
Like 5?
I was the only one. I was more often than not the only white kid who was at SFU at 7 to 8 p.m. on a Monday
night. And
that's
for two reasons. An Indian parent is not afraid to whoop their kid's ass, and that makes them less likely to go home. And 2, an Indian kid, if they end up unsuccessful with a bad GPA, their parents will still whoop their ass at a grown age.
Yeah.
And and that's another thing I like to say: beat your kids. Okay, listen. And when I say that, I'm not saying like roundhouse kick their ribs in, but like if they do stupid shit, a little smack on the face. Like, listen, I'm not saying
you giving the 1-2 Mayweather. You do that to your kid? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying knock out your kid, but like a little smack on the mouth, because listen. Negative, it's a psychologically proven thing. Negative reinforcement works exponentially better than positive reinforcement. Because this is the thing. If you okay, let's say you're a kid, right? And this kid, spits on some other kid, and you tell them, no, Johnny, don't do that. And the next day they don't spit on this kid, they're gonna get a candy. Oh, great, I got a candy. But they're much more inclined to be like, oh, well, nothing happened to me. All I got was a candy. If I'm not going to lose that candy if I don't already have it, so might as well just spit on this kid again. But listen, if you smack this kid across the face, the likelihood of him spitting on this kid again is nearly 0, because that shit hurts and he remembers. Listen, there was times when as a kid, I don't even know why I was like hit by my parents, but I just knew I just didn't. There were just certain things I didn't do anymore.
Can I think I got spanked once or twice as a kid, but I do.
And look how you turned out.
I host a podcast, and and I do remember there was one time where I got in shit from my mom for leaving my shoes on the steps, and my mom, like, that was like the angriest I ever saw my mom. Was her yelling at me for leaving my shoe. If you don't start putting your shoes somewhere else, they're going in the trash. And what, like, she told me this at like 6 or 7. I was just like, holy shit, I've never seen my mom this angry.
And then you never put your shoes on the staircase again.
No, I never do. I never put them right in the middle of the way. Like I put them off.
Exactly. And then white punishment is just like, I have such a problem with a timeout. Like, you know what? You've been a horrible child. Go relax over in the corner over there. Like, fuck off. He's like, oh, please relax on the staircase for me. Like, anyways, it's been an honor to be a guest. I know we've been trying to plan this for like the past like 18 months.
Well, part of it is that, like, I like to do in-person podcasts too, but we've had to do Zoom, of course. And
which I did too.
So yeah, I know we've been trying to make this happen. Again, thank you for taking the time to do this. It's greatly appreciated. And we'll have to get you on again soon. Maybe we'll get you a post-election pod. I don't know. We'll see. You have to help us get big in Montreal. You have to, sell us to your McGill friends. That's your goal, Sukhdeep. That's your goal, is promote SYP to people at McGill. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sukhdeep. Be sure to like this video on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the pod on Spotify and iTunes or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. We'll talk again